So the next company we talk about, special in so many ways, 11-bit Studios. It's a public company based in Warsaw, and they are famous not only in Poland, but all over the world for a game that was released in 2014, This War of Mine. It got more than 100 awards and was featured in publications like Time magazine. But it's not the only amazing and touching game they have released since then. And 11-bit Studios does what they call meaningful game design. But what does that mean? And how do you achieve that? The one definitely knows is Marta Fijak. She is a lead game designer at 11-bit Studios. And we are very much looking forward to your talk, Marta. Welcome.
Hello, welcome, and thank you for having me. And I would like to take you on a journey, but first I would like to share my screen. It will make a lot more sense. So please. So, can you see the presentation?
Excellent.
Perfect. I was worried for sharing some sensitive data. You can imagine it can happen. So, hello. Once again, my name is Marta Fijak. Currently, I'm a lead game designer at 11-bit Studios working on the new project, Project 8, about which I cannot sadly disclose too many details. And as so, I would like to take you all on a journey of creating Frostpunk and what it means in terms of quite specific kind of games that we are making, as we brand ourselves as a company which makes meaningful entertainment. And when I say meaningful, it's something that we want to leave the player with a question or with a feeling or something that we find important in a way. So after releasing This War of Mine, as it was already told, we were standing in front of an immense task. This game got an amazing reception and achieved a lot more than we could actually hope for. And following game like This War of Mine, it's a moment that can make or break a company. And the end of that story, the end of the next game after This War of Mine, you probably know, as the second one was Frostpunk. Of course, this is not the second game made by our company. There was many games before This War of Mine, but This War of Mine is a cornerstone, like a pivot point that defines who we are and what we make. So after This War of Mine, we started to work on the next title that eventually became Frostpunk, but that was a long and bumpy road. To put it a little bit in context, Frostpunk eventually turned out to be a survival city builder game about what society is capable of when pushed to the limits. But this is something that we came eventually after many iterations, as after This War of Mine we sat in the front of blank canvas and started to throw ideas what we would like to do next. And the question is, how do you start building a game? At 11-bit Studios we come from the experience. We start with experience, we start with the core feeling, the core fantasy that we want the player to have, as this is that kind of overarching structure that put everything together. Both the art, the design, the audio, the storytelling. Everything has to serve the experience, and as so the experience has to be really strongly stated. So there is no question about what it is and what we would like to tell about. And we knew quite early what we would like to do this time around, because This War of Mine is a survival game at its core, and we kind of felt comfortable with that kind of a systemic gameplay. So what we wanted to do is make survival, but this time at scale, more toward the city builder aspect of the game, especially that we already had a lying prototype of a city building game called Industrial that became a technical backbone, in a sense, for Frostpunk. Second, we wanted to have that frozen world to show the burden of leadership, to which I will come in a second. You need some kind of external threat. Can be internal, but in that case, we wanted an external threat. We wanted something that the player has to oppose. And the frozen world was something that grasped our imaginations from the very first concept art. And even at the very beginning of creation of that game, that quite, I hope, eye-catching picture of that hole in the ground covered by vast amount of snows was something unique for us. But this War of Mine was not just a simple game, it was a game about what it means to be a civilian during war. So in here also that kind of deeper question, that kind of more, in our perspective, socially important aspect needed to be added. And what we wanted to explore is the burden of leadership. So in terms of survival, in terms of frozen world, what it means to be a leader in that kind of situation, what kind of decision you would have to make. And all of that should be built around the build, rule, explore, survive. Build the city, rule the people in there, explore as the frozen world around you is full of questions and answers to be found, and survive to support that survival scale. So as you know, both good stories and games are created along an axis where the player has to put himself. Like in every narrative bit, every story arc is between some values that fight with each other. In games, it's special because the player by himself puts on the scale what it is. So we assign such a set of values at the very beginning to our core aspects and what we want the player to survive. Of course, survival versus death is quite a no-brainer, because if you die in a game, you don't play anymore. So there's no question in there, but this is that core gameplay mechanic that pushes everything forward and creates that kind of motor that forces you to go into all three other pairs. Right, so next would be a sacrifice, good of one versus the good of many. And here already the leadership aspect started to come forward. It is, in terms of this War of Mine, there was only 3 people, so it was always good of them. But when the amount of those humans is 100, 200, 300, what then? Should the good of one be more important or the good of many? And the adaptation, this is something that we find quite fascinating in the times of apocalypse, that we actually did not explore so strongly in Frostpunk, but still, and this is the way of clinging to the always or adapting to the new future. Because when your world falls apart to bits and pieces and it's broken, would you try to rebuild it as it was or try to move forward and create something new? And of course, the leadership that I already talked about. So what hard decisions and what part of your humanity are you going to sacrifice to ensure survival of your people? But all of this sounds nice and dandy when it's written down on paper and you look on your grand design, not grand, but your vision document. It's 3 pages, it's really coherent, it looks cool, but then the, day-to-day development comes. So let's look on the nitty-gritty of how it actually went. When moving from that vision doc, we ended with a game that landed on the shelf. And to simplify it, as I only have half an hour, and I'm almost in 1/3 of it, let's focus only on the society design. Because as I already told you, Frostpunk is a survival city building, society city building game. And that society part was the most novel for us all, as there was not many references. Because for the city building, you can collect quite vast base of references from which you can pick and choose and start to build. But society was something different. So coming from this War of Mine, we wanted to design for immediate empathy. Players felt for those little humans in this War of Mine, so that was quite natural for us that when looking on Frostpunk, we want people to care about little humans in the city. So to first decide what those little humans are in terms of society, we needed to find a fitting quote or a definition of society, because there's a lot of back and forth what society is, to support our game and to guide us during that very early stage of prototyping. And of course, I picked the weirdest, not weirdest, but the one that says that society does not exist from Oscar Wilde. But how counterintuitive that it sounds, it kind of helped us and guide us during the development, because now we didn't look on our people as a group, not an abstract system of society, but society came as an emergent behavior of a set of agents, so set of little humans. So first we need to describe our humans, who they are, what they do. And in here, as always, the basic good Maslow pyramid of needs was quite helpful. And for the very beginning, for the very first prototype, we decided to go with the lowest level of it. So the physiological needs of our little humans and their need of safety. As physiological needs, it was the food, the cold, so they won't freeze to death, frozen world. And the safety was having roof over their heads. So now every little human in our game, remember, very early stage, was described by those three parameters. And if he was not satisfied with those parameters, he would say something from time to time. And that was our first prototype. So our people would walk around, do their little city building things, and if a parameter goes too low, there would be a pop-up saying like, oh, people are mad because they are cold. And if something happened to them, for example, they would die, we will, out of the blue, bloop, show a black screen asking the player a question. As we knew from this war of mine that good questions resonated well with players, and also they resonated really nice with us. Like, should you steal from the old people? So we put the same thing here. And due to Victorian era setting of the game, for example, the question of kids walking was interesting for us. So what would happen in that very, very early build? You cannot see too much, but here is even before the city was circular and there was a huge generator in the middle. The game would prompt a question when you assigned everyone to walk, being like, hey, player, I see you don't have enough hands to walk. Maybe you would like to employ kids. And that was the very, very beginning of what society eventually became. So what we do, as we always do, we created a prototype, we gave it to everyone in the company, let them play, see what happens. And as this was Proto 1, we got the yays and the nays to guide us forward, our great future. And of course, the nay was absolutely no player agency. And what happened is the player could not plan anything connected to its society, especially saying that society at that stage is a little bit stretch, I have to say. And what was even worse, those question popping ups were weird interruptions. So someone was optimizing and thinking about call placement and poof, black screen, PowerPoint presentation, what the hell is happening? So that was problematic. And also there was absolutely no narrative coming out of it, because what is important is to remember the difference between the story and the narrative in game. And the narrative in game is the sum of all of the story beats and also gameplay actions. This is the whole narrative experience of a given game. As to contrary the story, those written plot points are things that are not changeable and the same for every player. And there was no narrative coming out of it. They were just bringing calls, someone died from time to time. There was a question to eat them or not. That's all, because yeah, cannibalism was also a thing back there. But the decisions, as we expected with our intuition, sticked well. People were like, should I or should I not? So we set out to make another prototype. And we first focus on the narrative through gameplay. And this is how the Prophet was born. This is an unused concept art in the background of the Prophet. So as we had those little black boxes, we decided to put a lot more story in them. And to make them less abruptive, we created a mechanism of call to action. So no longer a big black screen, but a little icon floating in space that you have to actively click to check it out. Seems a small difference, make a huge impact on the reception of that. So using that new element, it's more UI flow element than even a mechanic, we created a whole branching story. And we based it on existentialism, because as you know, existentialism in our world came to be in that most strong version after the Great Wars, the Great War and the World War II. But we discussed that in the world of Frostpunk, as a horrible thing has happened, the existentialism as a concentration, as not finding a reason to live and exploring around that would appear earlier, because what those people have saw in London, in falling London. So we needed that, and we we added that, and we added a new need, a need for sense to live. Now it sounds funny, but yeah, we added that. And also, as those people, as our players didn't look on those people as a society, but individuals, those needs that I told you before got a visual representation on the screen, a bar that was an average of every citizen. So that was a new explicit parameter at this content that came from all of our little humans. And once again, and based on that existentialism and those new needs, we created a whole long scripted branching story about a guy who thrives on the fact that our people are afraid, promise them a false god, and want to take them away from the city to a great new world, probably their demise. What was important in there was the question at the very end, should we kill the man or let him free, if the player was able to capture him? So once again, another proto. We gave it away, everyone played it, and once more, nay and yays. So people, first of all, were not buying the fear thing, the lack of sense and the existentialism. It did not have enough exposition, it was not sticking, so for that time being, we just dropped it. And the bigger problem is that we had two separate games. There was a city builder, and from time to time you get a nugget of a story, just an icon. There was a connection between what buildings that you have put down to how the story shaped, but it was not clear for the players, and so it didn't change a thing. But people like to have a story. People got invested in the story, and people discussed whether killing him is okay or not. And as so, we pushed that a little further. The question was if the end justified the means. Of course, we can go after Niccolo Machiavelli that the end always justified the means, but in the company, we saw two fractions forming. Some people were like, no, he cannot be killed. I understand that this is the end of the world, but this is bad. And for other people, it was a no-brainer. Of course, we should kill him. Of course, he is a threat to the final city on Earth. So we knew we stumbled on something interesting, something that sparks problems. So yeah, as we are full of ego, we ask, does it really? And put it as one of the principles for further design. So we set up to make another prototype, and we took back the problem that we have previously, no player agency, and wanted to address it. And we wanted to add more stories like Prophet, but shorter. And this is, we came up with that formula of not having many different pages that you read through the gameplay, but shorter stories that all paint the picture of the city, but that have max 3-4 those boxes appear. And we wanted through all of we do support the question whether the end justifies the means. At this stage, because Frostpunk is developed on our proprietary engine, on Liquid Engine, we decided to go to prototype inside of Unity, on the side of the game, just to, not in the game entirely, but on the side in a separate prototype, because it would be quicker, allow us a quicker iteration time, and allow us to check the new things. Because we wanted player agency, we wanted to support the question, does the end justify the means? And this is quite late in the development, when the Book of Laws as a set of things that you can enact was born. This is the first prototype that was created. As you can see, the hard decisions below, that you cannot bury people, you can have brothels, you can add alcohol with food. The player could pick different things here. And on the left, you can see a set of new parameters that would shape the society in different aspects. And if you play the game, you know that only 2 of those landed in the final game, but you know, production is production. And also to counter with the discontent, we tested new parameters, fear and hope eventually sticked. So that first prototype, as ugly as it is, was from kind of successful. So we moved to another one. We changed how this is also Unity. That Frostpunk in the background is just a screen that was put in Unity to make it, more cool. But the front is playable. So we started to put those laws, those hard decisions in the form of a technological tree, because this is kind of how it works, and adding unlocking system so the player in his head can have anticipatory play. So plan. So I can make that decision, and in some time I will make another decision, and this is how I will shape my society. And eventually our great artist got to it and make it less programmer's art and a lot more beautiful. And in the final game, it looked like that. And remember, it started from that incoherent mess in Unity. And once again, we had a lot of different laws. We added a lot of different aspects to help with the player agency. And we started another round of testing. And people liked the player agency and people liked the laws. They had their plan in their head, and when planning appears in your player's head, it's good. It means that the anticipatory play is happening, and the anticipatory play is kind of the key of the ludic experience. So that was great. But still not enough of narrative was building in player's head, especially that now we wanted to show how that society changes and what happens. And people did not like how laws were connected, which was quite weird because we kind of, ordered them in the first iteration from the least powerful to the most powerful, having just a normal skill tree in terms of balance for that. So we started to dig deeper around that concept of how the laws are connected. And we found that sociological concept of boiling frog and or the creeping normality. And that was a great addition to our game. Just to shortly remind what is the boiling frog story, and as a biologist, I can tell you that this is absolutely not true, but it works on the sociological terms. The idea is that if you put a frog in boiling water, it will jump out. But if you put the frog in cold water and start to turn the heat up, the frog will boil itself. Still not true, but it works as a metaphor for building totalitarian states, for saying that those things do not happen over time. It's not like one day it's all great and dandy, and the second day it's a full-on totalitarian state, Orwell style. It's rather that pushing the boundary a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. And you are not having that experience of one day it's good, another day is bad. One day you just realize that all of the things that already happened make you are in the totalitarian state. And that was that creeping normality that we wanted to add to the game. So due to that process of all of those prototypes, we had few new things which were good to guide us further. So the key question we wanted to ask the player: does the end justify the means? The key concept, the creeping normality, also known as the boiling frog. And we knew that short stories are good, and we have the player agency that came from those laws. But to show creeping normality and to show boiling frog, we lack permanent change in our people. So once again, we jumped out on another adventure to create that change. And as you already know, we had those short stories, those three act black boxes to show what's happening. So we decided to connect them one-to-one to laws. So every law has currently a set of different consequences that can be picked from, little stories that kind of tap back into that concept of good of many versus the good of one. So laws are constructed like that, they will serve a greater purpose for the whole society. But the further you move along the tree of laws, then the harsher and harsher consequences are for the individuals. So that was the approach we want to have. The consequences are always about a personal cost of a global change that may be beneficial for the society, but doesn't have to be beneficial for every person. And it worked nicely, but we found another problem like it is in game development. And that was the tone. And that's extremely personal thing. So we wanted for those consequences to have impact. But every written text, every media thing stands on that, axis of subtle to hardcore. And the problem is that when you write it extremely subtle, then people who are writing for do not understand what you are trying to conceive, what you are trying to show. But when you go too hardcore, it goes too much and too far. It becomes grotesque. It creates an immersion breaker, and it can even make things funny where they should be shocking. And the problem with that is that the point in tone that that you resonate the best with is extremely personal. Every one of us have a different zone for it. So that was one of the bigger challenges of writing Frostpunk, as we rewritten every consequence many times, testing on as many people from the company, from as many different backgrounds as we could, to see what resonated with the biggest amount of them, just to know that they will resonate with people and they will show what we want them to show. And of course, consequences are not the only way we show change in our people. A change in visual, gradual change that we also had to iterate a lot, not to make it look extremely cartoonish. But as you move forward on those laws, your city also changes. Your city starts to reflect on the fact that your people are or in military regime or in religious regime, because both of those systems presented in the game are totalitarian states, just the flavor is different. And the means of connecting the people. And eventually, to show that change, we added one final law to all of the paths that we presented, so that faith and order. We added a law that was the final saying that, yes, now we are the totalitarian state. They were constructed like a bait for the player. So they gave a lot of great benefits gameplay-wise, but on the side of morals, there were already player was far too far, for my liking at least, when he had the options to sign them. But still, they were just proclamation of totalitarian state of different flavor. And if the player decided to do that, it was shown with consequences and with the full story, why and what happened and where he pushed his people to. So what we had so far, we had the key questions. Does the end justify the means? The creeping normality, the short stories, the player agency, the permanent change in our people. But the thing is, we started with the idea to have that empathy that we had for people in this war of mine. And the question, have we succeeded in Frostpunk to do that? And the truth is absolutely no. Because empathizing with 500 people is rather hard, to say the least. Maybe doable, we were not able to do it. But analyzing that problem, and I'm speeding up, sorry, because I'm running out of time, we came to the final piece of the puzzle. We wanted in the moment empathy, but we finished with the post-playthrough reflection. What I mean is the players did not care about those little people, but our beta testers came after the play of the game and they were like, am I the bad guy? Have I done the wrong thing? That kind of intellectual analysis of what has happened, that struck an emotional chord, happened after the game. And Michael Sellers, in his book Advanced Game Design, also talks about that kind of loop, that long-term emotional and cultural loop that happens outside of game. And this is something that we struck. So, to support that eventually, we added the ending to the game. The game already has, I think, 3 years, so I'm going to spoil the ending, sorry. The game does not end with the show of the future. The game confronts you with all of the things that you have done. Secretly, we are recording the whole playthrough and every law, every decision that you make. And after you finish the game, we just confront you with all of that. And if you cross the line that we set up from our European centric, we will ask you a question. Was it worth it? To leave you after the game, to dwell, was it? And what we had in the end is that three aspects: the post-playthrough reflection, the creeping normality, and does the end justify the means? And did we nail it 100%? Of course not. And the development many times felt like a circle. And being in there, stuck in there, it seems that we are not moving forward. It's still the same and the same and the same, and we are just rehashing concepts. But the truth is, when we look from now this perspective of time, it was a spiral. It was a spiral in a sense that, yes, we were adding and removing similar elements, but the quality was growing. And yeah, I hope that even if we did not nail it, the experience was, at least a little bit meaningful. So, thank you. And do you have any questions? Please ask us. We have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Marta. You are perfectly in time with your presentation. Excellent. Thank you so much. We have time for one question, and we got from the audience. Who takes part in testing the prototypes? Is it just the team, or do you use external people to have a look at the game? How does it work?
So for the bigger part of the development, we test internally. So we create playtests for the whole company, and everyone in the company who has time plays the game, fills out the survey, and we also collect analytical data. As for external playtesters, we introduce them in terms of Frostpunk, I think 6 months before the release. We are also quite secretive of what we are doing and where we are going. So that kind of playtests are always a chance for a leak, even if the NDA is signed. So we introduce them quite late. And also, games are a mean of expressing something. And in the company, we have quite coherent view on what a game is. So at the very beginning, we want to use our collective conscience to judge the game before we take someone from the outside who will have vastly different opinions on what a game should be. So just to deliver that 11-bit Studios trademark thing.
Great. It's fascinating to see how much energy and philosophy goes into such games. Excellent. Thank you very much, Marta. When I first heard about the new project of Cipsoft in Regensburg, my first thought was, okay, now they are completely crazy. But of course they are not. They know exactly what they do, and they are so successful that all team members got a full year's salary of bonus for another record year 2022. 20, thanks to the ongoing success of their massive multiplayer online role-playing game Tibia. Now they are working on a blockchain game called LiteBringer, and we are happy to have Stephan Vogler with us. He is co-founder and CEO of Cipsoft. Welcome, Stephan.
Yes. Hello. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Stephan Vogler. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Cipsoft. And I'm happy to be here and have the chance to talk about our latest project. My talk is not too long, so we will have plenty of time for questions afterwards. But yeah, let's get started. So I would also like to share some slides. Let's see.
I am more than just a swordsman. I explore the lands of Acerania, from busy markets to uncharted ruins. I am a pioneer, going where no one has gone before. Every successful quest brings riches. Every defeated enemy brings power, as I rise up to become a mighty knight. I am a slayer of monsters, defeated stronger and stronger foes. I live to face down my enemies. I live to raid. I am a collector, hunting all the rarest weapons and armor. There's always better loot to find. There's always a better deal to be made. I am a trader, buying and selling everything I want. I'm like no one else you've ever met before. I am a Lightbringer.
Thank you for playing the trailer. I wanted to show it as a little bit later, but it's also fine at this point. Yeah, that's LiteBringer, and I will talk about what we did with this game. So let's share some slides. I hope you can see the slides. Is that okay? Yeah, perfect. So yeah, first of all, that's us, Cipsoft. Who are we? We are around for quite some time. The company was founded 20 years ago. Actually, in June, it will be exactly 20 years ago. And we're based in Regensburg, in Bavaria. Regensburg is a beautiful small town, a 1 hour drive away from Munich. And Cipsoft has currently almost 100 employees. And we are pretty comfortable with the size of company. Yeah, what have we done in the past? So Cipsoft develops and runs online games. Our oldest and most successful title, which was mentioned a couple of times today, which I'm very happy about, is Tibia. Tibia is one of the very first 2D online role-playing games. And it's online for more than 20 years now and still very successful. It has 250,000 active users, and during its lifetime, it has generated more than $200 million revenue, which is quite a lot. And we've never dreamt about it because when we started, we were just students at the university. And yeah, actually, what is funny is that most of our Tibia players, well, a very big group of our Tibia players are Polish players. We have more Polish players than German players. And I just learned that Marta, who was talking earlier about Frostpunk, great talk, by the way, she was actually a Tibia player when she was younger. So that's really nice to hear these stories. It happens from time to time that grown-up people now tell me that they have played Tibia when they were teenagers. That's cool. So yeah, so that's our most popular game and most famous game. And in 2003, we released also a mobile version of Tibia called Tibia ME. It holds the Guinness World Record for being the very first mobile online role-play game, so the first MMORPG for mobiles. And it's also still online and popular, so we have many long-lasting projects. So we have quite some experience with online gaming, basically. That's what I want to say. And what we saw during all the years running our games was that all the virtual assets in the games developed real value. Things like characters, weapons, mounts became really valuable for our players. As a consequence, there has always been demand for trading these items. Yeah, whenever some player has no time and wants something and some other player has it, there's opportunity for trading. And that's why there has always been a huge black market for virtual assets in our games. Because for various reasons, we never really supported trading for these kind of things, in the sense that you can take real value, real money out of it. There are some challenges about that, and so there have always been black markets. And blockchain tech allows us for the first time to turn these black markets into legal markets and make basically these markets part of the game. So for the last couple of years, we've been working on a new game, and this new game is LiteBringer. In LiteBringer, everything you gain has true value because you can trade everything. So without more words, I would have showed here at this point the trailer, but you saw it already. Okay. Yeah, the gameplay of LiteBringer can be described as an quite simple idle game with role-playing elements. But more important, and that's the main focus, it's a collecting and trading game. So the game is set in a fantasy world, and players can create characters like fighters, rogues, or sorcerers. And these characters can be sent on quests to level up and collect items. There are many different items, and all can be used to improve the abilities of your characters. In order to get really, really powerful, every character needs to specialize in something. So therefore, not all items are useful for all characters. You know this from many games. So for example, if you find a magic wand, but you have no sorcerer, you don't need it. So what do you want to do with it? You want to trade it. And that's what's special about LiteBringer. Everything in LiteBringer can be traded. So that's our rule for the game. Everything which belongs to you, you have the power to trade it away if you want to. Unlike in other games, you're not limited to trade your items for in-game currency or other items. No, in LiteBringer, everything can be traded for Litecoins. Litecoin is a well-established cryptocurrency. It's the second oldest cryptocurrency which is out there, and that's why it is very popular and widely used. And especially during the last months, the adoption grew bigger and bigger throughout the world. So in LiteBringer, every move in the game is a transaction on the Litecoin blockchain. Therefore, the player has to pay a small transaction fee for every move. But in the Litecoin network, this fee is very, very small. That's a good part about it. So it's only a small fraction of a cent for each turn you have in the game. And LiteBringer is the very first game which is based on the Litecoin blockchain. The game is fully decentralized. Yeah, when I was young, I was always dreaming about something like this, and now the tech is here. The game is fully decentralized. There are no necessary game servers. So all data, like weapons, resources, and even characters, they are stored on the blockchain in a decentralized database, basically. So the players have true ownership over their belongings. And every move in the game is a transaction on the blockchain that creates value. So as a result, if you're a good player, LiteBringer can live up to its name and may bring you some Litecoins. The game launched last year in September, and it has got quite some attention in the gaming industry, as well as in the crypto and Litecoin community, and especially of course, in the Litecoin community. The community loves the game. The Litecoin Foundation is advertising our game, and they just wanted to do it, basically. And the founder of Litecoin, his name is Charlie Lee, is playing LiteBringer and promoting the game. Yeah, he's online chatting with our players and is on our Discord server and is helping other players, which is nice to see. And yeah, since the launch of the game, more than 20,000 characters were created, and there were 6.7 million transactions written into the blockchain. And the interesting part is that's a major part of all transactions on the Litecoin blockchain. There was even one day when 80% of all Litecoin transactions, so basically 80% of all activity on the Litecoin network was made by LiteBringer players. And for us, it's just the beginning, it's just the start. So last month, we had our first larger update for the game. We introduced some important features. For example, a leaderboard for all characters, which is of course interesting because you want to be a good player and you want to compare yourself to other players. And also a good character viewer, which allows you to inspect the details of all other players. And but maybe most important, we have done some major performance improvements. And since then, the growth of our user base increased, and it almost doubled during last month, which we are very happy about. Yeah, and this is already the last slide. One thing I wanted to talk about is how we optimize the onboarding for our game. Since LiteBringer is fully decentralized, all players have to run a so-called Litecoin node in order to play. It's basically the software which is also running Litecoin. And this can be quite demanding for the player hardware and lead to long loading times. And therefore, we implemented a few optional services for the game to speed things up. So it's important to know that these services which we implemented are not necessary for the game to function. And you can actually turn them off if you don't mind the loading times. But if it should be smooth and fast, you will need them. And of course, needless to say, that's very important to all people who know crypto. Your private keys are never transmitted. They stick to you. And because the game is decentralized, you are in full control over everything you own. So what are these services? The first thing what we implemented is a pre-calculated game state service. So after installing the game, it will download a recent game state, and only the latest transactions have to be processed afterwards. So this speeds up everything a lot. But again, if you don't want to do this, you can turn it off. And the second thing is a balance tracker. Every player will immediately know how many Litecoins they have left, and due to this service, but both are optional, and you don't really need them if you don't want to use them. And the last thing what we've done to improve the onboarding for the games is that there's a special problem for blockchain games. You need the cryptocurrency to start, because every transaction, every move in the game is a transaction which costs transaction fees. You need some Litecoins to start with. So what we implemented is a so-called Litecoin faucet for new players. So if you want to start playing and you don't have any Litecoins to begin with, you can just press a button, and there's a good chance that we will give you a small amount of Litecoins to get you started. So there isn't much necessary to start playing, and so we can give it to you if you're a new player. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what we've been working on, and this was the introduction to LiteBringer. You can download the game if you would like to try it on litebringer.com. Once again, thank you for the invitation, and I'm interested in any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Actually, we have some questions, and the first one seems to come from Elon Musk. We have the question here: does Dogecoin also work?
No, not yet. Right now, it's only running on the Litecoin blockchain. The funny thing is, the tech between Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dogecoin is almost the same. So it's not a big problem for us to port the game in the future to other blockchains. And we of course we are thinking about it. For now, we are happy to make our first experiences on the Litecoin blockchain. But I already heard about the communities of other blockchains who envy Litecoin for the game and would love to have us also on their blockchain. And yeah, that's obviously something which we will look into in the future.
Mm-hmm. So basically, it would work with Bitcoin as well.
Yes, that's right. So the difference between Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dogecoin are just a few parameters in the software. So it's basically only a configuration change. And of course, we would have to change the name, because LiteBringer on Bitcoin or on Dogecoin wouldn't be perfect, I think.
Yeah, Bitbringer or something like that.
Yes, right. Yeah, that's right. That's true.
We've got another question here. Will the player receive some Litecoins when you buy LiteBringer?
Yeah, that's what I said. So not full Litecoins. A Litecoin got really valuable during the last month. So now one Litecoin is 200 euros. So we don't give away whole Litecoins, but we give away a very small fraction. So you will get a few cents, Litecoins in the value of a few cents, and then you can start playing with that. And you're free to choose just to play with a small amount. You can play quite some time with it, and decide yourself if you will get more Litecoins later on, or even if you're good at playing, you might have the chance to sell some of your stuff. You can trade. That's the most important thing about LiteBringer. And there were players who started for free and actually made some money, some Litecoins from playing during the first weeks, and now have enough Litecoins to keep on playing. So yeah, it's all part of the game, and it's interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. So I understand the business model of Tibia. What's the business model with LiteBringer? Where do you earn money in
yeah,
which
of
stage?
course. Of course. Yeah, so basically, we've done something similar to Tibia. There's also subscription. So we don't earn anything from single moves. There are only the transaction fees, which goes to the network, not to us. But each character which you want to play, need to pay a subscription. So right now it's like 40 cents for one character, and you can play then for 1 month this character. So that's basically the business model. And our goal is to have this fee, the subscription for each character, to be about €1 per month. So I think compared to Tibia or other games we have, that's a fair deal, basically.
So there's no microtransaction or something like that?
No, not really. Oh, yeah. The other important stuff is, of course, the trading between the players. There's a fee, a 5% fee, which goes to us whenever there is traded something of value. Yeah.
The thing with blockchain and cryptocurrency is that it tends to grow. Isn't the download growing a lot over time with all that much transactions? Is the next question we have from the audience.
You have to download a lot, that's true. But you don't need to keep everything. So basically, the game client is just keeping the current state of the game. So it just remembers what the game state currently is, and that's not a lot of data. But it needs to look at all things, all the activities of other players to develop this game state into the future. So just to keep book of everything. So that's the idea behind the whole decentralization of the blockchain technology, that everyone keeps track of everything. Yeah, and it's the same for LiteBringer. And LiteBringer doesn't need to look at all transactions in the Litecoin network. It only looks at the transactions which are related to our game. So yeah, you will need some bandwidth, but today it's not a big problem. So I think it's completely doable on a PC which is connected to the internet. And the space on the hard drive is comparatively low. It's not too much.
So you told us about the excitement in the blockchain community about this game, which is something new. Normally, blockchain looks like very complicated because you have to learn new terms like the wallet and stuff. How do you get new people into the game without distracting them with all the vocabulary you have to learn in terms of
well, my take on that is it's part of the fun, I guess. So right now, most of the players who come to us already know cryptocurrency and already have some knowledge about all these things. And since cryptocurrency is very popular these days, more and more people are coming. The market is growing basically for these kinds of games. For example, the Litecoin Foundation, they love the game because it's a good reason for people to learn about the tech and to learn about Litecoin. And yeah, you will be confronted with what is a wallet, what is a transaction, what are these fees. You will be confronted with it, but you will get used to it very fast. And we have done our best to keep it as simple as possible in the game client. And we will also invest even more time on the onboarding process in the future to make it even more easier for new players to understand. And yes, of course, there is a problem that I'd say normal PC players who have no connection to cryptocurrency will have to do some learning in the beginning to understand everything which is going on. But it's I can say it's fascinating, and it will get more important, not only in gaming, but in many areas of our life. I'm convinced of that. And yeah, it's a good starting point to learn about it. So 25 years ago, we developed Tibia. And at that time, almost no one knew about the internet. So we had also to explain people what an online game is, basically. So yeah, that's okay with us. We do this.
Yeah. Another question here from the audience: isn't there a big delay until a transaction is authorized by the Litecoin network?
Yeah, so the so-called block time on the Litecoin network is 2.5 minutes on average. So whenever you do something, you have to wait for the next block to show up on the Litecoin blockchain, and it will take between a few seconds and 2.5 minutes. So we have adapted the whole gameplay to make this work. So the game works like this, that you are thinking about your next move for a long time. So you're really thinking about which character I will send with which equipment to which hunting ground, and you're planning for that. And that's the fun part, basically. And then you send your character there, and you will wait for the result, and it will take some time. In the meantime, you can have another character which you can play and plan for. So usually active players will have more than one character, so they will have a team of maybe like 4 to 10 characters, which they will send one after another into the hunting grounds, and it goes round robin basically.
Okay. The thing with online role-playing games is the more you play, the more powerful your character becomes. So is it true that time is money within LiteBringer? So can I make a living out of when I play long enough? Can I become rich?
No, that's not what we would say. Well, if the game grows bigger, there will be more opportunities. But right now, it's well, our take on that is the game has to be interesting and fun. And if players only come to earn money, I don't think we would succeed. So we really think that we have an interesting gameplay, which is demanding and challenging. And then if you like playing and you're good at it, then you have on top the opportunity to even make some Litecoins. But I wouldn't say it's a way to get rich. No.
At least it's a very, very fascinating topic and very interesting game. So give it a try. Thank you very much, Stephan, for your time. Thank you for the audience for the questions.